Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, coming to you 6 days a week as we interview whitetail experts and hear their traditions and personal stories of the hunt. Learn more about the latest gear, discover proven tips, and the latest strategies so you can make your next hunt a success. Now, here's your host, Bruce Hutchin.
Welcome to Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast with your host, Bruce Hutchin, and episode number 260.
Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. This is your host, Bruce Hutchin, and we're heading to Arizona. Don't let that fool you because Ace Jerry, Luciano, hails from Wisconsin. He's a great partridge hunter. He's a great deer hunter. He's done some hunting, folks, and he recently moved him and his family down to Arizona. So we're going to talk about Coues deer, but more important, we're going to be talking about youth in the outdoors and what we can do as hunters to get youth involved. Also, we're going to be talking about what it takes to become a band of brothers. There's a lot of disconnects in the hunting world because somebody uses a Remington, somebody uses a Winchester. Well, it's all not about Fords and Chevys, folks. It's about, if you're a hunter, let's support each other. So stay tuned. It's going to be a great show, and I'm so happy to have Ace back. He was show number 11 a long time ago, and now it's show number 260. Welcome to the show. Hey, listeners, don't forget to text 33444 Food Plot for your free Food Plot ebook. Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. I'm really happy to have Ace Luciano on the show today. He's an outdoor personality, persona, outstanding, infamous, if I could say that. He's also VP of Strategic Partnership to AO. And so, Jerry, welcome to the show. His name's Jerry, and he goes by Ace. So, Jerry, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks a lot, Bruce. I'm happy to be a return guest on your Whitetail Rendezvous podcast. And by the way, might I offer my congratulations on smashing success with this project?
Well, it's humorous. I went back and said, when did I have Ace on a show? When did I have Ace on a show? It was March of 2015-ish. You were guest number 11. Now you're guest number 259 with over 70,000 iTunes downloads since that time. So, Ace, you were part of the launch, and here you are. We're just getting started. Still at the beginning of what we're doing here. So, thank you for those kind words.
Well, and how things have changed, because when we last talked, I was born and raised in the Midwest. I was a Midwest kid that hunted Midwest deer mostly, unless I traveled out west for something. Lived in Wisconsin and had kind of dominated my market there for a very, very long time. And in the meantime, between then and now, I have packed up my entire family and moved to beautiful and scenic Phoenix, Arizona. So it's quite a big change for us.
Yeah, from humidity and mosquitoes to Gila monsters, rattlesnakes, and 103 dry heat, right?
Right, and the smallest deer I've ever seen in my life.
Let's talk about that. I know, you've hunted Wisconsin and grouse hunted and deer hunted and did all that, but now you're in the land of those minute, but gorgeous desert deer called the Coues deer. So let's talk about the differences between whitetail and Coues deer.
Well, the main difference, I would tell you, is in their overall size. A really big trophy Coues deer goes over 100 inches. I mean, that's a monster. And if you shoot one, in the 130 range, you're talking top 10 record book. And as you're probably aware, back in the Midwest, if you're a trophy deer hunter, you really don't look at anything under 130 inches. And you're more looking at things in the 150 to 160 inch class, right? So that's number one. The antlers are much smaller, but the deer overall are a great deal smaller. And for a great period of my life, I was a Northwoods deer hunter. And in the Northwoods, deer are big bodied. I lived in the UP, which borders Canada, And an average deer is well over 200 pounds. There are numerous deer that are shot that are pushing into up to and over 300 pounds. And then, of course, in the Corn Belt in southern Wisconsin and, northern Illinois, it's a common occurrence to shoot a deer over 300 pounds. They look like the size of a small cow, so you get a deer down, it's a project. Here, these little coos deer, and some people pronounce it, it's weird. Phonetically and grammatically, it's coos, but a lot of folks here pronounce it cows, and apparently both ways are acceptable according to the DNR. And you could take one of those, gut it, and stuff it in your backpack and carry it out. They're a small deer, but they call them the ghosts of the desert. And I have to tell you, I have been scouting around. I actually drew a muzzleloader permit for any antlered deer in one of the areas down here, and I have been pounding the ground. And in the entire time that I have been scouting and looking, in 7 trips of on average 6 hours of field time, I have seen 3 deer, 1 antler buck. So it's a very interesting thing. It's, if you drove around in the Midwest, even up in the Northwoods, if you got on a 4-wheeler and went out, you would see deer. I mean, even in the UP, where deer can be as few as 6, 7, 8 per square mile, chances are you would still see a deer. Here, your best bet is to get someplace high and spend a lot of time looking through optics and glass. And because the area I'm in is a combination desert and mountain habitat, I actually have 2 different ways to hunt. Down in the lower desert area, it's all about the water. If you can find water, you'll find deer. And in the higher elevations, it's cover. So there's some hiking involved in the higher elevations, and in the lower elevations, there's a lot of glassing and, spotting and stalking. And ironically, it had been a while since I shot my muzzleloader, and I forgot that I had changed my muzzleloader. So I was did some promotional work for a company that gave me a muzzleloader. And it turns out that the muzzleloader that I'm using did not like loose powder. I was all over the board and called them up and said, what do you do? I don't understand. I'm used to weighing my black powder charges to make them the most accurate as possible. And I have had sub-MOA accuracy for muzzleloaders. And they're like, everything we've done has been with pellet because that's the vast majority. Try pellets, and I'll be darned. I am 2 inches in a 3-shot group at 200 yards. So today's muzzleloaders they're pretty, and the 2 of them are within an inch, and 1 was a little out, But, today's muzzleloaders are quite an amazing tool, and with the right optics and such on it, if I can get within 200 of one of these deer, I anticipate knocking 1 down. Now, the other thing in my unit is my tag is good for any antlered deer. So if I hunt low, I'll be hunting a lot of whitetail, a lot of coos whitetail. But if I go high, it'll be mostly mule deer. So we'll see. I got a chance at both. And I've seen in the area that I've looked for mule deer, I've seen a couple of small mule deer bucks, spike forks, things like that. And Arizona's a little unique in that you get 1 buck per year. That's archery, rifle, muzzleloader, whatever. Your tag is good for, the limit is 1 buck deer per person per year.
Wow.
Coming from Wisconsin, most recently from Wisconsin. When you buy what they call the patron, license in Wisconsin, that's good to hunt, fish, and trap everything in Wisconsin. It was $180 or somewhere around there. You got a rifle or a gun deer tag that included a buck tag and 2 doe tags. And if you went through those, you could go and get another buck tag and basically in southern Wisconsin, unlimited doe tags, right? You also got an archery buck tag and an archery doe tag, right? And then if you wanted a muzzleloader hunt, you could get a muzzleloader tag 2. And again, southern Wisconsin, we used to shoot 4, 5, 6 deer a year with my kids and I. And I was, as I've gotten older, have become much more selective. I'd much rather let the kids shoot a doe or, shoot a small buck for their first deer. And get really excited about that. I don't need to shoot a deer that badly anymore. and they like it. As a matter of fact, my son drew a youth tag here, which is an antlerless hunt. We're going to go to the north rim of the Grand Canyon.
No
And
way.
it's an antlerless only hunt. And it's for the youth up there. The tag, the area that he drew in, is one of the most coveted mule deer tags in the country for an adult, because adults can only get antlered deer there, and it's very limited. The only place in Arizona that's more coveted is an area called the Strip. Which
Right,
is,
I was thinking of the Strip or Kaibab, or how do you say that?
The Kaibab, yeah.
Right, it's the Kaibab.
Yeah, we're in the Kaibab, and the Strip is an amazing hunt, but that's another weird thing out here. If I want to draw a Kaibab deer hunt, I have to start putting in now, and maybe I'll get one in 10 years. If I draw a tag of any kind anywhere else in Arizona, I lose all of my points.
No way.
Yeah, so it's a really, adjusting to the draw system here is very odd. And I've talked a lot with the DNR, because I've become involved with a youth group and an organization down here that's doing great things, and we'll get into that more later. But in talking with the DNR here, I had asked the question, why aren't the deer managed better for the numbers? Because I talked to guys that had hunted here 20 years ago from here that said that there used to be a ton of deer in the Kaibab, and what they did entirely the opposite. They managed them to be super prolific, and then disease came in and wiped them out. So we've kind of swung the pendulum all the way back the other way. From what I understand, this youth hunt is a pretty gimme hunt. I mean, if you put in any effort at all, you'll get a deer. But the new, with the new seasons and regulations and the growth of trophy hunting out west, tags are hard to come by. So it's been interesting, to say the least, moving to the west. I've done less hunting in the year that I've been in Arizona than I have in any time I was in the Midwest, because we would start in September 1st with early goose and dove season. And I lived on a lake, I lived on Beaver Dam Lake for several years, and, we'd move into waterfowl season, then we'd hunt deer. And then, it was all a big mishmash of hunting from basically September through May, right? Through turkey season.
Right.
Here, it's an entirely different story. And I got to tell you, it's really been an interesting experience for me. While I spend absolutely as much time outdoors, I'm doing a lot more and a lot different things. For example, the rut here is in January. So I'm fortunate.
Oh, is that for elk or coos deer or cows deer?
For the deer, for the coos deer and the mule deer rut is in January here.
How about the elk? What's going on with the elk?
Elk is in September, October is their rut, like most elk, right?
Okay.
So the nice thing about that is, because I've never let state lines control my hunting, I can go to some of my favorite places, including Wisconsin if I want, and go and deer hunt during the peak of the rut in November and not miss a thing in my home state.
Right.
And I'm getting kind of excited. I qualify for a crossbow tag license in Arizona because I have issues with my shoulder. There are no crossbow licenses unless you have a doctor's note, so to speak, or a defined disability. Well, there are many days when I can't even pick up my bow with my left hand. And I train tremendously to even be able to do that occasionally. I have to tell you, more often than not, I shoot my traditional bows just for fun in the yard, just so I can say I'm shooting my bow, because there are days I just can't, because of the punishment I did to my body as, a youth athlete and as a collegiate athlete and a fighter for a long time. I still hurt. And that was another thing, the reason why we looked at the move to Arizona, because moving here, I've been able to be a lot more active, and the weather here is just a lot easier on bodies that have ailments. I didn't think it would be this different, but it is, and it's been great. Plus, we have 300.
Let's stick on that. Go ahead.
Well, I say plus we have 350 days of sunshine. So.
Yeah, I know that. I'm sitting in Laguna Niguel, and this is the first day of cloudy weather we've had in the 2.5 weeks we've been out here. But let's go back to the crossbow thing, because I, like you, spent a lot of time on the football field and did some interesting things with my body in the Coast Guard, blah, blah, blah. And so my shoulders don't work anymore. I can't pull back the compound. So the doctor wrote the note here in Colorado, or for me in Colorado. And so I have a I have a dispensation to archery hunt with my crossbow, and I did take it on my sheep hunt, and they're quite accurate. The thing in Colorado, you can't use telescopic sights, so I got one from Bad River Outdoors. It's really good fiber optic sight. And, at 60 yards, it's like, okay, they're going to die. And that's one of the advantages I see with the crossbow. But the biggest thing is, and I'll just lay it out there, a lot of traditional archers or compound archers, they just don't want to let go of the thought that, hey, you and I are out there hunting. We're buying licenses and we're hunting. And the gear we use shouldn't matter one iota. Your thoughts on that?
I've always been, I agree with the primitive season, and I agree with the reasoning behind the primitive season. And I think it's admirable for someone that can do it. A guy that shoots an elk with a longbow that's a tremendous accomplishment. Any elk with a bow is a great accomplishment. Cow,
no question about it.
Monster bull, right? It's a hard hunt, right? Guys that then limit themselves to 20 or 30 yards with traditional equipment, I understand that as well. Understand that if I could do that, I still would. And the crossbow gives me the opportunity to participate. Now, I wrote an article a few years ago with my first experience with a crossbow that was entirely different. As a matter of fact, if I had had my bow, my actual compound bow, I would have killed 2 world-class deer in Kansas. Okay. I took a shot and missed because a crossbow is not a gimme. And let me tell you, when you're trying to hold that steady in a tree stand, with limited rest and things like that, it's harder than you think. And I missed him by just a hair, but I missed that deer. That deer then ran from 40 yards out, or 37, I think it was, when I shot, and stood under my tree for 12 minutes. I sat 5 yards from a 170 class whitetail, unable to make a follow-up shot because there is so much motion and or noise involved in cocking a crossbow. That's what you get, So I said it was not what I thought it would be. There are challenges with a crossbow as well, right?
Right.
Do I think that we should limit people? No. And I'm actually not a proponent of not using telescopic sights. I think that's what. Are you saying now that someone whose vision has gone now shouldn't be able to participate in hunting? Why can't I use a telescopic sight? What big advantage does that get me, right? If anything, I think that it makes it more likely to have an episode of wounding an animal and inability to recover. Why would you not give every advantage you could to making a clean, humane kill? And I'll tell you a great example of why that matters. And that is this most recent debacle with the Under Armour and bear hunt and using a spear and all that. That's I think it's fantastic and quite an accomplishment that that person killed a bear with a spear. Don't get me wrong, but now you're talking about a tremendously limited amount of options, right? I would not have the confidence to kill a bear with a spear. Not at 10 yards, not at 15 yards, not at 5 yards, maybe at 5 yards, right? So that's a self-limitation. I agree with any self-limitation that a hunter wants to put on him or herself. But when you're talking about a crossbow, the data's out there. Adding crossbows to the mix doesn't change any of the dynamics of the population. It doesn't change the harvest percentages. All it does is increase participation, license sales, and probably most importantly, it increases the amount of people that go to these rural communities and spend money. And there is nothing ever bad about that. So I'm a big proponent.
No, yeah, and thanks for that. And one thing, since I use my fiber optic sites in Colorado, and realize that it's on par. If I do it right, by that means just the way it's set up, you have to get the right line of sight, let's see, or sight picture. Let's call it that. So sight picture, telescopic sight picture, right?
Right.
Same thing. You get you get your setup, you get your crosshairs, and you have to have the right sight picture because if you're up, if you're off, if you're canted, there's a gazillion things that can go wrong with a telescopic sights. I know because I've made those mistakes on my rifles. So you look at a crossbow and say, wow, this is really good. But what I found, field of view and everything, until I'm on the game or on the target, in my case, because I never get a shot at my sheep, but you have to be, exact. It's no different to me than shooting, a vertical bow, a compound or a traditional bow with the sight picture. Traditional people, it's instinctive, so I was incorrect there. But with the compounds, very few people shoot that instinctively. So they've got fiber optic sights or one pin or how many pins they want. But your sight picture has to be the same. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly the same thing that I have now on my crossbow. So I'm leaving my fiber optics on my crossbow when I go to Wisconsin and Kentucky this year. I'm going to hunt with that because it's just easier. I don't have to worry about the snow. I don't have to worry about fog. I don't have to worry about my heavy breathing because I'm excited because Mr. Wonderful's 30 yards away and all that. And it's just, I'm very comfortable with the fiber optic sight. So that's my 2 cents on that piece of the pie.
I know guys that regularly kill deer at 60 yards. And I know actually an outdoor professional that this year shot an elk at 74 yards with his bow. I mean, that's a legitimate shot. When you practice at those yards, you can make that shot. And I have not seen any significant increase in my killable distance of animals since I switched to a crossbow, because I would regularly shoot deer at 40, 50 yards with my bow. I was young, I was strong, I could do it. Then I had to make it, I had to make adaptations because as my shoulder got worse, my accuracy at longer distances suffered. The ethical thing was to not shoot at those distances, so I didn't. Then I got to the point where, I really couldn't hold the bow anymore. And it's not even that I can draw the bow, I can hold it out, but the minute I, trigger that release, there's a moment of intense agony as the bow drops in my left hand that gives me a horrendous flinch. Now, do I want to wound a 7x7 bull of a lifetime because that day I'm having a bad day? No. Do I want to risk my once in 10 years that I might get a chance at a good elk on the fact that I might not be able to hunt every day that I'm able because of physical limitation? No, the crossbow allows me to do that. So
it's
more to come on that.
Yeah. And we should put together a show on that whole thing. Anyway, you mentioned one thing, and I know a preponderance of archers out there, compound shooters, use a release. Now, a release to me, you get to your anchor point and you pull the trigger. Mm-hmm. When I shoot my crossbow, I get to my anchor point, which I do have on my stock, and it's no different than a kisser button. It's a piece of moleskin on my stock. Mm-hmm. But anyway, once I get there, then I get solid, I get my sight picture, and I pull a trigger. So, folks, I'm not trying to steer the pot here, but I want people to be more open-minded than you might be, because in state of Michigan, probably the best data, scientific data, on the impact of crossbows was done by the state of Michigan, University of Michigan, and a lot of smart people, biologists and such, and regular hunters, and they put their findings out. So just go search that and see what Jerry said. The impact between archery and, let's just say, crossbows, traditional archery, compound bows, or crossbows, is so similar that you might see a trend either way during specific times of the season. But overall, I'm gonna agree with Jerry that the differences just aren't there.
Well, I tell you, the biggest thing, Bruce, and this is something I'm really passionate about, and I hope it doesn't take us off the topic, but we're all hunters. We are brothers in the blood, brothers and sisters in the blood. And my attitude on hunting has always been that if it is a legal means, in other words, if you are hunting via legal means, you are my brother, and I do not castigate, degrade, defile your reputation, say bad things, disagree. Whether I disagree or not, I don't do those things. And here's why. There are people out there that have hate in their hearts towards us for the sole reason that we choose to have a direct connection to our food. There are people out there that not even are vegetarian anti-hunters that call hunters names like barbaric, cruel, right? All of those things. All of those people out there, they don't care that we shot a deer with a crossbow, that we shot a deer with a rifle, that we killed a pig with a knife after it was caught with dogs. They don't care what the means is. They don't want to stop bear spear hunting. They want to stop hunting. And what we've done in the outdoor world, in the outdoor industry, is we have grown a crop of people that use a tool that I refer to as their anal optic. Do you know what an anal optic is, Bruce?
No, sir.
An anal optic is when you interject a butt eye. For example, there are many hunters when, if you remember Cecil the lion and that debacle was going on, that said, yes, I'm a hunter, but I would never hunt a lion. Or I hunt for food and eat whatever I kill, and I would never, but I would never be one of those evil, quote, trophy hunters, right? And what that does is it does bad things to all of us. It does bad things to the brotherhood of hunting, and with continued divisiveness in things of that nature and extended and extensive use of the anal optic tool, we will lose hunting. Because when it goes away for one person, those people have no desire, they have no further reason to support what you do. And I'll give you a great example. Trapping is on the agenda right now today in Montana. There could be a law that passes in Montana that bans trapping as a means of animal take. And one of the big complaints there is that the hunters are not coming to the table because, you know what, most hunters don't trap. Well, when it comes time for them to go after the hunters, what do you think the trappers are going to do? They're going to say, you know what, when it was time, the hunters didn't back us. You know what? I don't bow hunt. What do I care? We are all in this together. And I lived this when I lived in Michigan. I don't know if you remember or you were involved at all, but when they tried to ban the bear hunt in Michigan, there was a big divisiveness in the state. And it took a great deal of time, effort, money, and the coordination of national wildlife organizations to save the bear hunt in Michigan. Because a lot of people said, I don't care, I don't bear hunt. Or they said, you know, I'm a hunter, but I would never bait for an animal. That's unethical, right? That's how the antis win.
And that's amazing. And I'll just throw this out. I don't know if you've written an article about it, but I'd like to talk to you, offline on that because, anal optic, that's got a ring to it. And the guys that go hunt, I think that would be a great article to ship to those guys and we could see it. So think about that and we'll talk about that. Jerry, it's unbelievable, but we're coming up on a minute and a half of our end of the show. And I wish I could go an hour with you this morning, but we'll be back in touch because we're like-minded and we're getting to the age that we're looking at hunting as something that's enriched both our lives. And because of that, we got grandkids and everything. And the hunting tradition has been instilled in my life since I can remember. I killed my first chickadee with a rubber band and a paper clip. Over breadcrumbs, I baited them over breadcrumbs just because I wanted to see if I could do it. If I could sit under that pine tree, I'll remember it all my life. And I was under 10 years old, and I did it because I wanted to prove myself that I could be a hunter. And from that point, like you, I've been fortunate to go a lot of places and hunt a lot of things and meet some great people. But having said that, we got to wrap the show up. So give some shout outs to people across your sphere of influence, and then we'll wrap the show.
Sure. Well, I'll tell you that the one thing that I'm fond of saying is that we are who we are as a species because our ancestors were hunters. Hunting is in our genetic makeup, and it's something that is a worthwhile thing to continue. That being said, I am a big proponent of anybody that helps kids. And I've been fortunate now to be affiliated with two great organizations. One is the United Sportsmen's Youth Foundation, based out of Illinois. And they do some tremendous things with introducing kids to shooting, hunting, the outdoors, and instilling a great sense of stewardship in people. And I was fortunate when I moved to Phoenix to be introduced to a couple of fellas that are doing great things in an organization called Youth Outdoors Unlimited, based here in Arizona. They work very closely with the Arizona DNR, and they make the hunting experience for kids out here a tremendously educational, safe, enjoyable, and easier experience for people that are not knowledgeable than any place I have ever heard of. I mean, we attended their turkey camp in the spring. We're attending their deer base camp in the fall. You can get in contact with these folks, and they run these great camps where basically all you do is show up. They handle all the food. They handle everything. They hook you up with mentors. If you want to experience hunting and you don't have experience, you've got your hunter safety card, and they're just doing great things. So I would say reach out to those folks at the United Sportsmen's Youth Foundation and Youth Outdoors Unlimited, or like organizations in your area. Even if you're an old timer, even if your kids are grown, we all need to give back to this sport that has raised such a fantastic generation of responsible men and now women that it's time for us to do our due service and give back. So if I could leave one lingering message, take a kid hunting, not your kid. Take your kid's friends hunting. Do it with 5 kids this month and do it again next month, and commit to introducing more people to our heritage. You'll thank yourself for doing that.
Ace, thank you so much for being a guest on Whitetail Rendezvous, and it won't take us over a year to get back to each other, and I'll talk to you offline with a couple ideas that I have. But having said all that, on behalf of all our listeners throughout North America, thank you so much for your words of wisdom today on Whitetail Rendezvous.
Bruce, it's always my pleasure.
Make sure you listen to the next episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. We're going to head to Madison, Wisconsin. We're going to talk to Mark Boardman. Mark is a marketing director at Vortex Optics. Vortex Optics, in my opinion, has customer service head and shoulders above everything. And you'll hear about that in the show, how they, within 5 days, turned around a set of 15 by 50s that got dumped over. The tripod went over, and I sent them back to them overnight, and they get them back to me within 5 days, and that included a weekend, folks. So hats off to Vortex Optics, and listen to the show. Mark's got some great thoughts about optics.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.